So this lie is about 100 years old.
Welcome to the channel where we analyze what prominent speakers really mean with what they are saying.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews.
That's a statement from Benjamin Netanyahu from, I believe, 2016, just before a visit to Germany where he met with the then Chancellor Angela Merkel. I know the clip is somewhat dated, but it recently surfaced on social media, which is how it came to my attention. Benjamin Netanyahu is a good subject of study because he is a battle-hardened and very sophisticated veteran when it comes to manipulating public opinion both within Israel and abroad. The reason why the clip we are looking at today is interesting for an analysis is the fact that Netanyahu applied manipulative strategies to distort the history of the Holocaust to fit his right-wing agenda. That was, as we will see, even for his doing, probably a step too far. But before we have a closer look, let's watch the whole clip. It's virtually just a minute long.
And this attack and other attacks on the Jewish community in 1920, 1921, 1929 were instigated by a call of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution. He flew to Berlin. Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews. And Hajj Amin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them. And he was sought during the Nuremberg trials for prosecution. He escaped it. Later died in cancer after the war, died of cancer in Cairo. But this is what Hajj Amin al-Husseini said. He said, the Jews seek to destroy the Temple Mount. My grandfather in 1920 seeks to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So this lie is about 100 years old.
Okay, and now let's have a look at the details. I will begin with the facts that Netanyahu presents and will then go on to analyze the manipulative strategies that he applied in attempt to make them stick. Keep note of the dates that Netanyahu mentions at the very beginning.
And this attack and other attacks on the Jewish community in 1920, 1921, 1929 were instigated by a call of the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini.
1920-21 and 1929, so he's quite specific here in terms of the period. Netanyahu also links the attacks from these years directly to the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Why the dates are important will become clear in a moment.
The Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, who was later sought for war crimes in the Nuremberg trials because he had a central role in fomenting the final solution.
Okay, so by now it is clear who the antagonist of Netanyahu's narrative is, the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Amin al-Husseini. And yes, in 1945, Yugoslavia sought to indict the Mufti as a war criminal for his role in recruiting 20,000 Muslim volunteers who participated in the killing of Jews in Croatia and Hungary. But when Netanyahu gets on thin ice is when he links the Mufti to Hitler's final solution.
He flew to Berlin.
That's why I said take note of the dates 1920, 21 and 1929, which Netanyahu mentioned at the beginning, because al-Husseini flew to Berlin in 1941. So here's the first instance of Netanyahu being either factually incorrect or purposefully deceptive. And now comes the key part of Netanyahu's statement.
Hitler didn't want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews.
Hitler did not want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews. Again, we are focusing on the facts at the moment. I will come to the implications and intentions of this statement in a moment. Al-Husseini had his meeting with Hitler on November 28, 1941. 2 years earlier, in January of 1939, Hitler had already said in a speech at the Reichstag that he was determined to exterminate the Jewish race. And the concentration camps in Poland, which were built under the so-called Operation Reinhard, started construction in October 1941. That's a month before al-Husseini visited Germany. So when Netanyahu says Hitler did not want to exterminate the Jews at that time, he is clearly wrong.
And Benjamin al-Husseini went to Hitler and said, if you expel them, they'll all come here. So what should I do with them? He asked. He said, burn them.
This statement about the supposed exchange between al-Husseini and Hitler is a fictional narrative, and Netanyahu knows it. As self-described ardent reader of history, like he did in his interview with Lex Friedman, which I've also analyzed, he knows that there is no evidence that supports the claim that al-Husseini asked Hitler to burn all Jews. What we do know is that al-Husseini indeed met Hitler in 1941, and it is more than likely that he expressed anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist sentiments during that meeting. But the exact details of their conversation or any specific requests made by al-Husseini have not been documented anywhere.
But this is what Benjamin al-Husseini said. He said, the Jews seek to destroy the Temple Mount. My grandfather in 1920 seeks to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So this lie is about 100 years old.
In the interest of time, I will not go into Netanyahu's Freudian slip in this segment, where he said that the Jews seek to destroy the Temple Mount. Instead, let's look at the lie that the Jews seek to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This lie is about 100 years old. Well, anyone familiar with the topic knows that Jewish religious fundamentalists have long advocated for the rebuilding of the third Jewish temple on the Temple Mount, which is currently occupied by the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So Netanyahu is bending the facts here a bit. Okay, but what is it that Netanyahu actually wants to achieve with this statement? The context was, as already mentioned, his upcoming visit to Germany. Can we be sure that this trip, or better his meeting with the German Chancellor, was a contributing factor in his speech? No, we can't. Is it likely that Netanyahu tried to do some image management before his trip as a cross-national lubricant? Well, judge for yourself. Now let's look at the strategies that Netanyahu applied. Constitutive rhetoric focuses on the role of rhetoric in not just persuading and convincing an audience, but in also shaping and constituting social and political realities. One element of constitutive rhetoric is called selective framing. Selective framing is widely applied by PR agencies, corporations, and politicians. Manipulative speakers often employ selective framing to present information in a way that supports their agenda while omitting or downplaying what does not suit them. They use carefully chosen language and examples to construct a particular narrative or argument that serves their interests. They do this to manipulate the audience's perception of reality by influencing what they see as important or relevant. In critical discourse analysis, we call this foregrounding and backgrounding. So how did Netanyahu frame this segment of his speech? He starts by linking al-Husseini directly to some attacks against the Jewish community from the early 1920s in claim number 1. You will understand in a moment why I give the claims a number. Then Netanyahu uses rhetoric to make a temporal bridge between al-Husseini's alleged involvement in the attacks and him flying to Berlin. By doing so, Netanyahu creates the false impression that these events are directly related, despite the fact that they are separated by more than a decade. This way he succeeds in framing al-Husseini exactly in the way he wants him to, namely as a violent extremist. You see, on a psychological level, you take the emotions, thoughts and feelings from the initial framing and project them onto the next events in the narrative to claim number 2. This makes it easier for the audience to accept claim number 2 In this case, that's the rather bold claim that Al-Husseini had a central role in fermenting Hitler's final solution. And you can repeat this process, because now he projects everything from claim number 2 to claim number 3, Netanyahu's main claim, which is that Al-Husseini was telling Hitler to burn all Jews. This is also where you can see that whoever wrote this speech was mindful about this strategy, because as I have shown, it was a carefully crafted 3-step process. And this 3-step process has a clearly defined goal, but I will come to that. Before Netanyahu now delivers his final blow to the antagonist of the story, which is Al-Husseini, he introduces what looks like a protagonist. Protagonists are usually the good guys in a story, antagonists the bad guys. So Netanyahu said Hitler did not want to exterminate the Jews at the time, he wanted to expel the Jews. This is an incredible statement coming from the Prime Minister of Israel, because it makes Hitler almost look like the protagonist here, the good guy. And it sounds like Netanyahu absolves Hitler for the Holocaust. But again, from an analytical perspective, what Netanyahu is doing here is he tries to increase the contrast between Al-Husseini and Hitler to make it appear that Al-Husseini supersedes Hitler in evilness, so that the audience is well primed for Netanyahu's final move. The priming is needed because otherwise it would be very hard for anyone to accept the core of Netanyahu's argument, which is that it was Al-Husseini who convinced Hitler to exterminate Jews, and hence by implication that it is the Palestinians who are to blame for the Holocaust. You really need to let this sink in for a moment. Before we now ask ourselves why he is doing that, let me briefly outline something that will help you to understand that Netanyahu uses other techniques too to make you think what he wants you to think. So please bear with me for a second. According to the arguments theory, an argument is a reasoned, structured and systematic communication that aims to persuade an audience of a particular viewpoint or position. It always consists at least of 1. A claim, that's the central statement or proposition that the argument seeks to prove. 2. Reasons, that's the supporting evidence which justifies the claim. 3. Warrants, these are the implicit or explicit assumptions that link the reason to the claim. Are you still there? Now I want to show you that you, the audience, were meant to reach a specific but implicit conclusion, and that this was supposed to be achieved through manipulation. And the tool used for this manipulation was the argument theory. So Netanyahu's implicit argument is that the Palestinians are bad and deserve everything that is happening to them. He tries to support this argument with a number of claims, such as Al-Husseini's visit to Berlin, for example. Then he bolsters his claims with reasons, meaning with supporting evidence, such as the fictitious discussion between Hitler and Al-Husseini. To round it all up, he adds the warrants which link the reasons to the conclusion. He does so by portraying the Palestinians as a people who have lied for 100 years, which should lead you, the audience, to the implicit conclusion that whatever repressive policies Israel has imposed over the Palestinians are justified. So we got the claims, the reasons and the warrant for Netanyahu's argument. Nothing is by chance here. But what do you think is Netanyahu's intended conclusion that you, the audience, are meant to reach? I would be really interested to know, so please leave me a comment in the comment section below. And whilst you're on it, you might also consider to subscribe. Now, on the surface, it seems that Netanyahu was distorting the history of the Holocaust in order to shift the blame from the Nazis to the Palestinians. But what he is really doing is, he is presenting a revisionist historical narrative by suggesting a conspiracy theory between Al-Husseini and Hitler, and he is doing so in a way that is designed to elicit strong emotional responses. Emotional engagement can make the audience more receptive to the speaker's message and less critical of its factual basis. And what is Netanyahu's consistent message to the world? All Palestinians are irrational terrorists who can't be trusted, and the only way to control them is by force. And the global support for this force is what Netanyahu is after. And this is where it all comes together, because this of course is completely in line with his decade-long right-wing policies. Keeping in mind that this clip is 7 years old, and fast forward to today, we can clearly see how this all aligns. Only this time it seems that the absurdity of the claim may have backfired. What surprises me is that the strategists behind this speech could have predicted this, because according to Stuart Hall's encoding-decoding theory, it's the recipients of the message that decode its meaning and not the sender. But that's a discussion for another day. If you like this kind of analysis, please let me know. It also helps to get a wider reach if you subscribe, because the algorithm, believe it or not, are not looking kindly at this type of content. Thanks for watching.